time to talk business with our partners 2 Degrees. Overnight, milk powder prices came down with a bump in the latest global dairy trade auction. Garth, Bray, BusinessDesk with us this morning. Garth, good morning.
Morning, Ryan.
4th consecutive drop and by far the biggest drop for the year.
Yeah. Bear in mind, though, off some very high prices. So, put that in context. Butter has been doing extremely well. I mean, when I did the numbers really quickly, at $7,500 a metric tonne US, that's still about $6.18 worth of actual cost in your 500 grams of butter there. So it's still holding up pretty well.
And milk powder, whole milk powder was down 5 points, just over 5%.
Just over 5.1%, which probably is almost. I don't think we've seen something bigger since back in 2 years ago, really, when there was a big drop.
Yeah, as you say, coming off a high base, but that is our biggest export commodity, is the whole milk powder, isn't it?
Yeah,
so.
and it probably gives you some insight into why Fonterra, when it was setting the forecast for the coming season, sort of said, OK, we're going to aim for like a $10 per kilo milk payout, which is roughly what they're trying to hit this year as well, and will probably more or less confirm in September. But they gave a range of like $8 to $11, just allowing that sort of global uncertainty. The state of the world economy might mean that those prices come down. I mean, interesting, they put some collection figures out yesterday. I think the last season was Fonterra's biggest season for milk collection in New Zealand in 5 years, 1.5 billion kilos of milk solids.
Wow.
So staggering numbers.
Yeah, it is. And as the rest of the world, other parts of the world have been obviously had to pull back, we've got the supply and the price is good, and so things are great. Despite some dry conditions as well. Yes. Yeah. Now, retailers doing it tough, blaming, speaking of conditions, weather conditions for the warehouse.
Yeah, right. I guess this is a downgrade to their earnings guidance that came out yesterday, suggesting that their full year to August, they could either make or lose $5 million. So quite a big range there to pick across. And they're basically talking about a delayed winter being a factor there. And I guess there's some sympathy for that. The market reaction was, yeah, well, fair enough. If you're a big retailer, you're ordering well in advance usually to get supply. If the season doesn't quite pan out the way you thought it was, you're sitting on a lot of stock. You're paying for that.
It's too warm at the moment to sell enough heaters or whatever.
Buy your beanies and buy your winter woolies and all that kind of stuff. Slight turnaround, I think Kathmandu, or KMD, which is the brands which owns Kathmandu and a couple of others, had reported about they'd said similar kind of problem in earlier guidance. They'd said, a little uptick at the start of June there. I think their June to June comparison was about 13% up.
Are you buying this? Is this because otherwise we would see this with all, I mean, if it's the weather and it's warmer than it should have been, then all retailers in the same space would be having the same problem, wouldn't they? Funnily
enough, you mentioned that. So Briscoes was saying back a few months ago, we're having a bit of a tough time in autumn, but they just got escalated into the NZX50 and the warehouse got dumped out last week.
Okay.
So maybe it's about how you do it and how you run it. That's important.
Some figures showing startups do better when they're run by women than men.
Yeah. This is an interesting one. Maybe that was an indication of who they should be looking at to run some of these companies. But we had some stats out of a conference down in Wellington that was talking to women and startups, and the local advice there was that backed up by some good reporting that female-founded startups generate about 78 cents for every dollar of funding, and male-founded startups produce about 31 cents. So, the argument being perhaps that they're just focused on the job rather than trying to go fast and break things, I think, was the point there.
Or is it that there would be more men doing startups, therefore higher risk of failure? I don't know.
Well, interesting. The Kiwi Bank CEO, Steve Yurkovich, was there, and he was saying that female startup founders were 25% less likely to fail, but found it about 50% harder to get funding in their estimation.
Okay. Well, maybe that would also explain the high, not that I'm trying to explain it, well, I guess it's important to explain, but would you, if you are, if you've got to get over the bars that are so much higher to get funding, perhaps once you do get funding, it means you've got a really great idea.
Right, or you're just really determined to make it work, which is half the battle, right?
Yeah, interesting.